Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Shooting the Shift. We're on a week with a number. I think it's like 47 now. It's getting dangerously close to a year of having been done this. And one topic we haven't covered thus far is the great and mighty Kei Car. I'm not going to introduce everybody this week because by now you should know who we all are.
Yeah, if you're watching up to this point, you know who we are.
If you don't,
just talked.
That weird guy down there who's wearing a shirt, you might not recognise him. That's actually Milton.
Yeah, except for the fact in the show that you're watching, he's down here.
He's somewhere. The guy with a shirt on.
There's only one of us in a shirt.
It's just a
I could take my shirt off if you want, boys.
Please don't.
That's exactly the opposite of what I'm saying.
Save it for the OnlyFans.
Times have become desperate. We're moving on to OnlyFans. So Kei Cars, right? As a class, created in 1949. He says very quickly, checking his notes. I've got notes. I've been organised, people.
Yeah, I've got notes too.
Bryn's got a notebook, having told us that he didn't research earlier.
Definitely not a headphone box.
We're feeling semi-professional this week.
So the interesting. I think the most interesting thing I found out whilst doing my research is that in 2013, so like 8 years ago, admittedly.
That's recent in the grand scheme
It's
of things.
recent in car history, right? 40% of the Japanese car market was accounted for by just Kei Cars.
Wow.
I mean, it's good. Just you saying that stat alone makes me wonder what percentage of all like Japanese car owners are within Tokyo.
No.
I'm fairly sure a lot of properties won't let you have a car unless it's a Kei car.
No, it's not. It's not necessarily that. The property. Sometimes you have to prove that you have the capability to park the vehicle, and because of the size of some of the parking spaces, that means the only thing that would fit is a Kei car.
Yeah.
But they're really good at parallel parking.
I have a Lexus that I can only drive if all of my neighbours are out.
We'll come back to that, Brim.
But anyway, so they get their magical special number plate colour as well, which is yellow with black writing on it. So just an English number plate, right?
Except somehow so much cooler than an English number plate.
There's Japanese letters on it.
And yet the exact same thing, right? I've got one in the boot of my car. Technically, the back end of the spike is a Kei Car when we're at shows. My show plate is yellow and black Japanese plate.
You didn't mean that just like half of the spike was registered as a Kei Car in Japan. Like, it's a Kei Car as long as you take the bonnet off. What?
In fact, I think the spike actually, if it was in Japan, it's too big and the engine's too big.
Yes, it is both of those things. In fact, the engine is nearly 3 times too big.
So, good point, Bam. What constitutes a Kei Car?
So,
660.
Yeah, I think that's the most common knowledge, 660cc.
Now that is very true, and that has been the case since the 1st of October 1998. And they've also got to be 3.4 meters long at the maximum length, 1.48 meters wide, and they can be up to 2 meters high.
2 meters is quite a long way though, but it's how you end up with stuff like the Suzuki Super Carry and the Alto wagon and that sort of stuff,
and the Tento and everything. It's why they're the shape they are. So
2 meters is tall.
It's 6'6".
It's only allowed to be 1.5 meters wide, guys.
It's taller than it is wide.
That's an unstable vehicle.
Yep.
A vehicle.
Yep. Bryn, I'll take you around a corner in the spike at some point, just so you can get a rough idea what that feels like. But that's not always been the case. You know, the engines have been as small as 150cc on a 4-stroke and 100cc on a 2-stroke. And to make this even better for Bryn, at that point in time, in July 1949, the maximum length was 2.8 meters, the maximum width was 1 meter, and the maximum height was still 2 meters.
Wow!
You could almost stand up in the car and drive it.
It's 2 meters is 6'6". I could stand up inside most Kei cars that oblige that rule.
Forget standing desks at work. How do you commute in?
Just park your car at your desk.
Yeah.
You watch out with that idea. Tokyo 2030, if population keeps going as it is, that's how it's going to be.
So and then you get to the midpoint. So the 70s Kei cars, they're the most likely thing that we're gonna start coming across over here, right? And they're like 550cc, so it's not too far out, right? And again, 1.4 meters wide. So they've only added since 1976 to 1998. They've only allowed you to have an extra 8 centimeters, even.
Had a rule here.
That 8 centimeters has got to be totally valid and vital though in a car that small, right? Like
they're probably
Bryn is desperately doing maths,
engineering things. They're probably thinking of like adding extra protection, like crash structures and that sort of thing.
Have you been in?
I
As someone who has owned a Daihatsu Hijet, I can confirm there are no crumple zones.
There is. It's your kneecaps.
It is your kneecaps. Yeah, exactly that.
But if you've got a little bit more width, you get a little bit more.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if a modern one is actually even smaller inside because they've had to add some crash protection and it's not allowed to be anywhere.
I figured it out.
I tried to get into the Honda SC660 at a show once and could not even contemplate it. Like, I could get a leg in the footwell. That was about it.
It's like watching a racing driver get out of a Le Mans car.
No. Worse. So what were you going to say, Mills? You had a point to make.
I figured it out. You know the Hijet you said it's got no crash protection?
Yeah.
The way it's built and stuff is, you're never going to crash it head on. It's always going to spin. So that's why you've got a big truck bed at the back. So that's the crumple zone.
To be fair as well, one of the worst things in a crash is obviously you stopping. So if you're so close to everything that you can't actually move that far, then surely you'll be better off.
This is the other thing. They've only got 660cc, so you're not going that fast anyway.
I can confirm that the Hijet used to blow a head gasket when you went over 50 mile an hour.
Is that in the reps? Is that in the wheels? If you try and go to
the safety feature,
it has to break down.
I did 2 head gaskets in that car, and one of them was trying to keep up. I don't think you guys were at the show. Trying to keep up with the convoy that phoned me and went, "We're bored," because I was leading the convoy in the Hijet.
But
I mean,
it's whole Kei Car concept is a bit weird because it only exists within Japan.
So it's not.
And car manufacturers make stuff specifically to be a Kei Car, and then they don't sell it outside of Japan. It's very rarely.
It's not that weird when you consider the fact that if you think of it as a people's car, so similar to the Volkswagen Beetle, the Mini, I don't know what the American one is, the Gremlin,
Pacer,
Ford Festiva.
That's the one, right?
Who?
Those size things, and if you think about a Mini's probably not that much bigger than a Kei Car of its time.
I'm just
look up the specs, Matt, while we check.
I did look it up once. I can't remember. But I was just looking back on my notes, and nearly all Kei Cars have been designed and manufactured in Japan.
Well, they tend to do their design work in their native language, Matt.
No, they're doing Swedish, didn't they?
Bryn, do you find yourself doing all your design work in Cantonese?
We were briefly talking about these before we started. The smart car, the French-made smart car, was briefly imported and officially classed as a Kei Car. And since then, the British Caterham 7 160 has also received such classification.
What?
Yeah, the Caterham 7 160.
Surely it's too long.
Is that shocking?
I'm not sure actually.
How?
Caterham 160, yeah?
Yeah, Caterham 160. You look that up. I'll look up the name.
Is there a little Kei Car sized Caterham kicking about that I don't know about that I now
it is.
want?
Caterhams are small.
And the 160 does look quite diddy. But
I've driven plenty of Caterhams, Matt, and I can tell you right now they are not the length of a Kei Car. They are significantly
I don't
longer.
know how long they are. Milton will tell you in a minute. But the Mini never, well, this particular Mini I'm looking at never would have been a Kei Car because its smallest engine size was 848 cc.
No,
I
that's...
got it.
that's the point.
I got 1.48 meters wide.
So that's within, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
3.4 long.
What's your...
Ooh, that has been built to regulations, that.
Okay.
That is exactly... So it can be maximum length 3.4 meters, maximum width 1.48 meters.
And that
Wait, really importantly, Milton, how tall is it?
It's less than 2 meters.
Have you ever seen a minivan? It comes up to your nipples. But that would explain why the Mini had such a cult following in Japan. Like a lot of the ones that got exported from the UK went to Japan.
This is the thing. So I'm looking at the specs. It went obviously from 848 cc all the way up to the 1.3, which is 1,275. So it was never going to be a Kei Car purely on engine size. Size-wise, it fits. So it's maximum length was 3.3.
But when was the Mini released?
70 something. 59 was the earliest.
So you had 3.59 being the earliest. You were still in 3 meter, 1.3 meter space.
Yeah, well, the maximum width was 1.397, so 1.4.
But if you bear in mind the statistics I gave you before as well, actually, if you think about the tendency that's occurred in the West for people to want a larger car than everybody else on the road, right? Except for us lot. You could consider that actually if the Mini is a bigger car than everything else around it, which seems like a stretch, because the statistic, 2013, the biggest year for sales of them, 40% of the car market, but still they account for 30% of the car market now.
Well, as I say, the classic Mini does fit in spec-wise.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising that it was so popular. Even in the UK, it was really popular.
Certainly now it fits dimensionally. From 1998, it fits into that space. And, you could probably imagine that when that happened, the level of import went up just because, well, if I can fit a Kei Car outside my house, I can fit a Mini outside my house. And style-wise, I know what I'd want to drive.
I don't know how it would work over there, whether you could import one, put a small engine in it, and then get it classed as a Kei Car.
Well,
on the Caterham,
Caterham,
you have to detune it, by the way. That's the difference. Okay. It's 80 horsepower and the limit's 63.
64.
But also with the importing the Mini thing, I imagine that although it might, it's not actually a Kei Car, that probably doesn't matter. The Kei Car thing is all like cheap tax and all that. Like obviously you're allowed to own a bigger car in Japan. It's just a real pain in the arse.
It's not. But tax is not horrific, right?
But the point
on a Kei Car, it's excise tax is 2%. On a normal car, it's 3%.
Okay, so it's not that. So you have no problem driving your Mini if it doesn't classify as a Kei Car. As long as you fit it in your Kei Car space, jobs are good. And don't put sport back arches though.
But as the point that we made earlier, if you're living in Tokyo and you need to prove that you can park your car in a space at a house before you can buy it, you're going to go out and you want something that's got a bigger engine than 550cc, because that's what it was at the time, you go and buy a Mini. Because you get a little bit more power and it fits in the space.
Yeah.
And it's the correct hand drive.
Yeah. So there's plenty of reasons to go and buy one, even outside of tax and all the other stuff.
I mean, I at some point am going to have a Daihatsu Tanto just because the spike isn't toastery enough.
I think... Because a lot of people would say, well, why do you like Kei Cars? Like, over here, they make no sense because you don't need a small car. They've got tiny engines. But I think the reason that we all like them is just they're really charming. I think charming is the exact word I'd use.
I think
There's also another point on them, is they'd make good for people that commute in London that don't want to do public transport because they like their own space.
Or maybe they can't for any particular reason, whether their job doesn't allow for it or
there's
like that.
It's not an easy route or whatever. But also it may also be for people that can't ride a moped or a 125. Because I do a little commute. I do 1.8 miles to work. There's no point driving, so I've been riding. But when it's down, you don't want to do it.
But the other thing is, I found this looking up the Kei Car that I want, the Mazda Flare wagon that you can't buy anywhere outside of Japan. Its turning circle is 4.4 meters. I thought, well, I don't know what that is in relation to anything. So we all know a London black taxi has a really tight turning circle. That's 7.62, which is nearly double.
You could just do a Yui in a dual carriageway.
I think you could do a Yui in a normal 2-lane road.
Old people like this.
I think the thing for me is like I would absolutely have a Kei Car as a daily, right? I don't do a massive commute. I don't need to go anywhere. I'm down country lanes all the time. It's great fun when I do take the Stagia into work, and the entire world.
The Stagia at the
the entire world. No, I took the Stagia in because I can every now and again, and because I've done a really big detail on the Spike recently, and I'm trying to preserve it for the last show of the year. But actually, you know, the Spike costs me half as much in fuel to run as the Stagia. And then a little Kei Car would cost me half as much again, in theory.
I have a question.
Okay.
What kind of top speed does the Kei Car do?
The only Kei Car I've ever driven topped out at about 50 mile an hour.
I'm fairly sure they actually have top speed limits.
No, they've got a horsepower limit.
Oh, it's a horsepower limit.
Yeah.
Which inherently, technically, is a speed limit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, if you're driving something that takes up the entirety of that legal size box, which a lot of them did because they needed to, and it only has 4 horsepower, you ain't going quick.
Well, 666, but it would still be good. Well, 64 horsepower, it's still quite a bit.
Mm.
Well,
How much do they weigh?
Sod all.
So, while doing my research, I went to see what fastest anybody's ever done. And Honda did one. And rather than doing a Kei Car, they specially built a car for top speed. But they used the 660cc engine out of the S660.
Yeah.
So that little Honda convertible thing that has, if I remember off the top of my head, about 47 kilowatts. But I don't know what that is in...
It's 64 horsepower.
64 horsepower.
Yeah, more than likely. Guess what the top speed they achieved across a flying mile?
73.
130.
3.
261.8
What, kilometers?
miles per hour. So
It must have had a different gearbox.
It would have had a different gearbox.
That brings a valid point. Milton brings a valid point there.
So, from what I could get from this article I read, they replaced its cylinder block, its pistons, crankshaft, valves, all of this stuff. Like, it only had to do this once. So it's like a drag engine. They just turn it all the way up, and it was like basically looked like an arrow, basically from a bow and arrow.
That's not.
So,
what's the fastest anybody's ever gone in a Daihatsu Hi-Jet then?
But the most curious thing was the Honda did a top speed record with a Formula One car, just to see what it could do, like unrestricted all the aero off. This 660cc thing went faster by 20 miles an hour.
Which brings us to the next point.
It's the fastest car they've ever made.
Mr. Eccleston, we need 660cc F1 to be a thing.
They have Kei Car racing in Japan.
Yeah, you say that. Kei Car racing is one of the best race series ever for the pure reason that they're all so restricted. They're basically all the same. So you don't have to put tons of rules on everyone because you just go, bring a Kei Car.
Yeah, that's your rule, but you have to
Is that the same as like the Peugeot Cup or whatever it was?
Yeah, it's like watching the Citroen C1s over here. You have to bring a Citroen C1. You have to keep that engine in it, which means you're driving a 900cc 64 horsepower box.
Except you can bring lots of different Kei cars, so they're actually
because they're all the same.
Well, no, it's not even that though. It's not even that though, Brent. Some of them are exactly the same. Suzuki makes some of the Mazda Kei cars. Mazda makes some of the Suzuki Kei cars, and there's loads of other examples of that. The Suzuki Carry is almost the same as the Honda Acti.
It's like I was trying to find the Mazda Flare page on Wikipedia, and it doesn't exist. It just takes you to the Suzuki page.
Yeah.
Because it's the same car. It's like, why? It's like vans in the UK, like the Sprinter, the Crafter, like they're all the same underneath. They just stick a different body on the top.
Same with the Nissan and the Mercedes pickup truck. Mercedes just put it on top of Nissan.
Yeah, and they do the same thing. But what is interesting is you find out that they make they make Kei commercial vehicles, but they also make Kei fire trucks.
Yes.
For what? If you need to put out a chip pan fire and that's it.
Yeah, I think they make it out of the Hijet, or the Japanese Hijet equivalent.
Kei ambulances, Kei police cars, they all exist.
Who are you saving in a Kei ambulance? You're not saving anyone. I'm sorry, sir. I know you've broken your spine, but we're going to have to fold you to get you to the
Luckily, you've broken your spine.
Well, no, that's the children's one.
So yeah,
it's like if you've been watching Mighty Car Mods recently, they've had the little K tipper in. He's not listening.
I've worked out how you do the K ambulance. They're allowed to be 2 meters tall, so you just slap people in sideways like boot racks. We can pick up 4 people on this run.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, ratchet strap them to the gurneys.
Yeah.
What, like they do on the space shuttle when you sleep? Get in the bag.
Pretty much, and then just slide them on in.
It's true. Like simple facts. So yes, there is a place for Kei cars in the future. I actually think that if I was the benevolent dictator of this green and pleasant land, that I would make everybody who lives in a city only be allowed to buy a Kei car.
Yeah, forget the congestion charge or the clean air zones or all that. Just Kei cars.
Yeah.
Because then it solves your problems of the roads being too small with everybody in their Range Rovers.
Exactly.
Yeah,
parking
you could
spaces.
do like a UK Kei car.
People,
twice as many parking spaces.
Yeah, people worrying about town centres being dead. Twice as many parking spaces. Everyone can get parked cheaper. Solved another problem.
The parking will be the same price. It's just you can make twice as much money.
Just remember.
Hang on, that's a really good idea.
Just remember.
Car parking spaces based on the size of your vehicle.
Because that's the thing. You wouldn't have to future-proof. You wouldn't have to future-proof car parking spaces and make them like twice the size you would normally need, because your cars aren't going to get any bigger.
Yeah.
I've just done the maths, gentlemen.
Okay.
Go on.
You can fit 3.5 Kei cars and like sideways on in the length of one Lexus GS 300.
There you go.
That's quite a big saving in space.
Yeah, but can you fit a straight six in a Kei car, Brent?
Yes, but that's all you can fit, and you have to put it sideways on.
In the passenger seat, yeah?
Yeah, but then you can pat it as you go along. Good engine!
But that just shows you, like, realistically, how small a Kei car is.
Yeah.
You could fit 3 of the bastards in there.
If you, like most British people who'll have seen a classic Mini, that's roughly the size we're talking about.
That is the size of a modern Kei car.
Yeah. They're just a fraction. I think they're 0.1 narrower. I think they're a little bit shorter, and obviously they're not as tall. But, yeah. Like the Suzuki Super Carry. You know, the tiny van that Hammond rolled on Top Gear? That sort of size. That's the size we're talking.
And it's mad, because even a classic Mini, you think you know how big one is. Then you see one in the wild and you remember, oh my God, it's absolutely ridiculous.
How big are they compared to the MX-5s?
Very small.
Yeah, they're tiny.
About the same height, though, aren't they?
MX-5, I think, is 4 meters long.
Well, Matt does that. Yeah, but I'm just thinking, as in a height, if you stand next to a stock MX like Mark 1...
Yeah, but they're not 2
it's
meters high either.
similar.
So, length of a Mark 1 MX-5 is pretty much exactly 4 meters, so it's too long. Its width is 1.7 rounded up, so too wide. And it's 0.1 of a meter shorter than a classic Mini. So it's 1.2 meters tall.
Oh, that's so cute.
Right.
And that height is all in the fact that it has 4x4 springs from stock.
But anyway, so
yeah,
bringing things to a close, the future of automotive things in the UK, if I am benevolent dictator, is in fact you're all going to have to go out and buy a Sinclair C5. Because it's even smaller. We can fit even more in the parking centres, Bryn. It'll be amazing. Think of the boon for the economy.
The boon.
The boon.
No.
Think of all the beige. You wouldn't know which beige 80s invention was yours.
There is a new Honda car that's really small, looks quite cool. It's like electric.
Actually, one more thing I want to bring up is the Daihatsu Copen. Daihatsu Copen.
Yep.
Purely for the fact that Liberty Walk make a kit for it that make it into a teeny tiny R35 GTR.
Yep. And getting onto this topic of mad things that go on with Kei cars in Japan, PVC drifting.
Actually, don't
different
Liberty
kind
Walk
of
make
thing.
a kit for the...
That is not a different kind of thing. That is 660cc Kei cars, normally Daihatsu mirrors, with a lovely little bit of fish tank piping, hand sawn down, put round the rear wheel, and then it's just like a permanent Mackey's tray.
I mean, before that, a lot of the guys that used to go out and do proper toge stuff in the winter season when it's all snowy, carry on doing toge stuff in Kei cars. They all have a Beta Kei car, and you see exactly the same videos of guys going hard on mountain roads.
Hang on, what?
Except they're all fucking alto works and stuff like that.
But that's the other thing.
Bryn, you need to send me that after this.
All these Kei cars mostly are all-wheel drive as well. So they can carry on doing this stuff.
Or they're front-wheel drive.
Lots of them are front-wheel drive.
Okay.
You get quite a few models that are full-wheel drive as well, Milts.
Yeah, that Mazda Flare Wagon is a hybrid, all-wheel drive and turbo. And they managed to cram that into that tiny package.
Yep.
And it seats 4. They all seat 4. This is the other bizarre thing.
I mean,
is there these tiny cars and they all seat 4.
The Honda SC660 doesn't.
Yeah, obviously.
It doesn't even seat one me.
Yeah. Matt, you say it seats 4. That's 4 Japanese people. That's not being racist. It's a cultural thing. That's 4 Japanese people. That's 4 Brits, isn't it? Let's be real.
It does not seat 4 bands.
No.
You wouldn't need Lawrence Springs if you got 4 bands in it, put it that way.
Also, since you mentioned the Honda, I just had a quick look and it's too big.
Yeah, but they look... I think those are a little... like a 700cc turbo engine, petrol.
The Honda E is not. Oh, what the Honda E
just
is
as like everyone has to have a small car.
Yeah,
you can have a big car, but it's not allowed in the city or something.
Yeah, you ain't going to get English people to actually buy Kei cars.
I would be really pleased if that rule came into place because I live in the middle of nowhere, which would allow me to have all the big cars.
Yeah, you're only allowed a second car unless if you've got to have at least one of your cars got to be a small one.
Yeah.
So you can have your car for going on your trips and whatever.
So, anyway,
we solved it.
Well, we have solved it. And on that note, because we're not allowed to say the other one because copyright issues happen. Thank you, Mr. BBC.
On that tiny car.
On that tiny car. At the next general election, don't forget to vote Violent Running. The others have all had their chance. Definitely.
You're going to have to change your name if everybody's in Kei cars. You can't be called Violent Running. Nobody's ever done anything violent in a Kei car. You'll have to be called sort of vaguely hooliganistic running.
Mad Max Kei Car. Mad Max Kei Car.
Slightly tomfoolery running syndicate.
Thanks to everyone for watching another half-hour episode this week. Next week we'll talk about some things maybe, and we'll be at a charity event on Sunday at the British Ironworks Centre for raising money for Mind, and then on the 31st I will be at the magical Telford International Centre for Ultimate Stance.
And I'll be at Drift Matsuri doing something worthwhile.
Hopefully Bryn will take a camera for us.
I'll be doing Drift Taxi in Santapod on that week. So we're all doing something.
So if everybody remembers their cameras, it could be a bumper week for content, but someone will forget one.
I'm with you, so I don't know what your excuse is.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good week. We shall catch you on the next episode of Shooting the Shift. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.